Hello, my friends. My name is Jack, and this is Sentinel Circle. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate it. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into the article of the day, and I'm going to follow trends today and talk about an article that everyone's talked about simply because, well, I personally feel that it's important to talk about it, and I was very hesitant to talk about this article, but it seems like a lot of people have reacted pretty negatively to this article. So we're going to go ahead and do that. It's from the New York Times. It's titled, "Men, Where Have You Gone? Please Come Back." And it's by a woman by the name of Rachel Drucker. All right. Well, it says, so many men have retreated from intimacy, hiding behind firewalls, filters, and curated personas, dabbling and scrolling. We miss you. So the immediate thought that comes to my mind is, if that's how you feel, then why have you been treating us like dirt for quite a long time? But again, that's just me. So it starts off, May 17th, a warm Saturday night in Wicker Park, a vibrant stretch of Chicago where 7 restaurants crowd a single block. I used to live in Chicago for a while. I don't know where this is. So I would imagine it's probably somewhere in a nicer part of Chicago. Troy and I were having dinner at Mama Dila, one of the quieter spots. The sidewalk patio held 5 tables, 3 two-tops, including ours, and a pair pulled together for a group of 8 women. At those tables, Troy was the only man. Based on what I'm seeing here, like, this place is kind of for women. You know, men, not to talk bad. I mean, I'm sure every once in a while we all like a nice meal, but, you know, a nice meal to us is actually being able to, you know, cook our own steak, have a beer, maybe a baked potato. I don't know. You know, my ideal meal is, you know, I am a sucker for a nice pasta. You know, I like my Alfredo, so I do like Italian places. That to me is kind of my vibe, but yeah, I get it. Anyways, the scene was beautiful. Low lights, shared plates, shoulders angled in. The kind of evening people wait for all winter. Okay, I mean, it May 17, yeah, that's getting close to summer, so I can see that's warmer, and Chicago gets pretty cold during the winter, so I get that. Still, I found myself watching the crowd as it moved past us. Women walking in pairs alone, dressed with care. At table after table at the nearby restaurants, there was a notable absence of men, at least of men seated in what looked like dates. Again, this is very predictable what's been going on. Troy and I have known each other for almost 20 years. We met at Playboy, of all places. Okay. We met at Playboy, of all places, back when we were both learning how desire gets packaged, sold, and sometimes misunderstood. I can probably already see the issue here. We stayed close friends, bonded not just by our opinions, but by the effort it takes to stay in someone's life. That night, we made the effort. Still, what I saw unfolding around us felt like something else entirely, a collective shift I couldn't unsee. It started to become clear the previous April when a man who had been pursuing me canceled a dinner at the last minute. There was a scheduling mix-up with his son's game. I understood. I'm a hockey mom. I get it. Still, I went. I wore what I would have worn anyway. I took the table, I ordered as well, and I watched the room. So basically, she had a date. She's a single mom. She's trying to date a single dad, and the dad had a game. So she ended up going, and she's just watching the room. That's fair. You already got the table. You might as well go have a nice night to yourself. I would have probably done the same thing, you know, especially if you had gotten all ready up and ready to go. Only 2 tables nearby seemed to hold actual dates. The rest were groups of women or women alone, each one occupying her space with quiet confidence. No shrinking, no waiting, no apologizing. That night marked something, not a heartbreak, but an unveiling, a sense that what I'd been experiencing wasn't just personal misalignment. It was something broader, cultural, a slow vanishing of presence. Again, the immediate thought to my mind is all the men are doing their own thing. A restaurant like this is not their own thing. They're probably at a sports bar. If they are out, they're probably at home gaming, which a lot of men are, well, my collective age would probably be doing. I mean, I know that if I was in this situation, she sounds like she's in her 40s. If they met at Playboy and, knew each other for 20 years, she was actually probably in her 40s. But still, they're enjoying life on their terms, and a restaurant scene like this really isn't a man's term. Me personally, I probably could see myself in a restaurant like this. Again, I do like fine dining every once in a great while, especially if I have the money. But for me, excuse me. I could make the argument that I would be here, but could also make the argument that I would not be here. I'd be somewhere else. It would just depend on, but I'm only talking about me. Like I said, other men probably, I don't see them in that position unless they absolutely were expecting something in return. I spent over a decade behind the curtain of digital desire. As the custodian of records for Playboy and its affiliated hardcore properties, including sites like Spice TV, I was responsible for some of the most infringed upon adult content in the world. I worked closely with copyright attorneys and marketing teams to understand exactly what it took to get a man to pay for content he could easily find for free. Yeah, I can see why this woman is in the position she's in currently. We knew what worked. We knew how to frame a face, a gesture, a moment of implication. I mean, Playboy's been around since what, the 50s, the 60s? I would imagine that, all that time they would have gotten those things down pat. It's very much an art and a science. But I digress. Just enough to ignite fantasy and open a wallet. I came to understand in exact terms what cues tempted the average 18 to 36-year-old cis heterosexual man. See, when you're describing men like that, it's no wonder you're in the position that you're in. I understand that that's the correct lingo, but men don't describe people like that, okay? Unless they are dyed in the wool, your side of the aisle, then they do that kind of stuff, okay? But even, like I said, most men just don't care. They don't want to deal with it. Okay? I know that may be a little out there, but I digress. What drew him in? What kept him coming back? It wasn't intimacy. It wasn't mutually. Oh, Lord. It was access to stimulation, clean, fast, and frictionless. Mutually? Something like that. Okay. In that world, wow. Let me pause for a second. Catch my brain up. In that world, there's no need for conversation, no effort, no curiosity, no reciprocity. I should be able to say reciprocity, but like when I see it, I want to say reciprocity, and that's not really what it is. It's reciprocity. No one's feelings to consider, no vulnerability to navigate, just a closed loop of consumption. You see, and this is the inherent problem, is this woman peddled in smut. She peddled in cancer of the mind and the soul. Let's be frank about this. That's what she did for 10 years. Okay, that's what this other gentleman she's meeting up with did for years. Is they peddled in the cultural rot that afflicts all men. Okay? And she's lamenting that men have disappeared. She's probably responsible for the bulk of why men have disappeared. Not fully, it's a collective responsibility. Let me rephrase that. Let's see here. What struck me most wasn't the extremity of the content. It was the emotional vacancy behind it, the drift, the way many men have quietly withdrawn from intimacy and vulnerability, not with violence or resistance, but with indifference. That's not what's going on here, ma'am. Okay? The problem is we all see what leads to those problems. Okay? Being open with a woman has caused more problems for more men than it's worth. Okay? That's really what it boils down to. They weren't sitting across from someone on a Saturday night trying to connect. They were scrolling, dabbling, disappearing behind firewalls, filters, and curated personas. And while they disappeared, women continued to gather to tend to notice who wasn't arriving and to show up anyway. I'm 54. Okay. I'm 54. So I was a little off. I said mid-40s based on that, but 54. Okay. I've been dating since the mid-80s, been married, been a mother, gotten divorced, and had many relationships long and short. I remember when part of the heterosexual male culture involved showing up with a woman to signal something. Status, success, desirability. Women were once signifiers of value even to other men. It wasn't always healthy, but it meant that men had to show up and put some effort. Well, again, there's that whole men need to do this, men need to do that, men need to show up and put effort in. And this is why men don't want to do this stuff anymore. Women are not seen as a status symbol. They're seen as a hindrance for a lot of men. Like I said, I personally have taken myself out of the dating scene, and I'm in my 30s. Simply because I feel it's just not worth the aggravation, the time, the energy. When I can do nice things for myself, no, I'm expected to pay the whole freaking bill. I'm expected to, put in all this planning and effort and energy. And I'm tired of it. I'm simply tired of it. It takes a lot of energy just to build myself up to go ask a woman, and then the immediate thing is, oh, I got a boyfriend. Oh, I'm not interested. Or the worst case scenario, police are knocking on my door. That's happened to a lot of men too. Okay. The HR nightmare, all that stuff. This woman, she's lucky she's, 54. She was there before these problems showed up. So she probably doesn't understand these problems, but I digress. That dynamic has quietly collapsed. We have moved into an era where many men no longer seek women to impress other men or to connect across differences. They perform elsewhere, alone. They're filtering us out. So already, now we're being told that we are filtering out women. We are the problem. So initially, we had to show effort. Now we're the problem in this situation. That's interesting. This is a very aggravating article. I can see why it was so popular. I recently experienced a flicker of possibility with James. We met on Raya, the dating app. God, you know, I that's the one downside to being in my position is I'm so out of touch with the dating scene. I have no idea what these dating apps are anymore. Like I said, the last one I was on was Tinder, and that was, oh God, 2012, 2013, something like that. And that was not good. There was something mutual from the start. Wordplay, emotional precision, a tone that felt attuned. It was brief, but it caught light. I remember saying to him, even fleeting connections matter when they're mutual and lit from the inside. I meant it. Oh my God. This woman is definitely a writer. You know, when she casually speaks poetry, you can tell she's a writer. There was just enough spark to wonder what might unfold, enough curiosity to imagine a doorway, but he didn't step through it, not with a plan, not with presence. He hovered, flirting, retreating, offering warmth but no direction. Sexual tension and a spark aren't reason enough to sit still and hope there's substance behind the shimmer. So I named what I felt. I texted him clearly with care, not simply to declare attraction, but to extend a real invitation to explore what was possible. Shut up. Oh my God. This is like... I feel like I'm reading a smut novel, but it's just like not going anywhere. You know, it like those old-fashioned like paperbacks that existed where you had like, you know, the man had a horse head, but like the man's body or whatever. All right, well, let's just I started this. Let's keep going. You know, let's watch this Hindenburg crash. Where did I leave off at? I didn't chase. I invited, leaving the door open. If he ever wanted to cross the threshold, not just to take, but to meet, I was willing. I wanted. I still do. He never replied. He still follows my Instagram stories, one of those small gestures of passive engagement that so many of us now mistake for closeness. It looks like interest. It feels like silence. Welcome to the club, lady. Like, seriously, you're at 54. Welcome to the club. That's all I can say. And more likely what's going on is he found something better. You know, if she's texting him like this and like he found something better, I wouldn't want to put up with this. She sounds exhausting. There are thousands of Jameses. I have known dozens. The arc varies, but the undertow is familiar. What I won't entertain is directionless orbiting. That thing that so many men now seem to mistake for connection. The perpetual maybe. The emoji check-ins. The casual seeing where it goes without ever going anywhere. We call it a situationship. What it boils down to is this dude doesn't want to commit. You know, he's probably realizes that it's not worth his time and energy. You know, because again, you're like, oh, I'm looking for something serious. Well, you're already divorced, lady. You already got kids. You know? I'm sorry, but that's the honest to God truth. And a lot of these guys, they don't want to be involved in that kind of stuff anymore. But mostly it's avoidance, an abdication of ownership. Of feeling, of behavior, of sex that isn't a means to an end, but is communion. Yeah. All right. Well, this is... I can see why people reacted the way they did. This is... This is awful. There was a time not so long ago when even a one night stand might end with tangled limbs and a shared breakfast. When the act of staying the night didn't announce a relationship, just a willingness to be human for a few more hours. What? What does this mean? I'm okay. I guess my understanding of intimacy is a little out there. Now, even that kind of unscripted contact feels rare. It's like it reminds me of the one guy that wanted to borrow the woman's credit card to buy butter so he could make breakfast for her, and she got the ick. Like, where does it end? You know, you want someone to hang out and have breakfast, but you want them to buy you butter or whatever. Like, and this is why, like, guys are checking out. It's exhausting. You know, like, you trying to figure out a person's boundaries and all that stuff every single time. Like, I'm exhausted just reading this. All right, we're about 50% of the way done. Let's just sweepy. Oh my God. We've built so many boundaries that we've walled off the very moments that made connection memorable. And frankly, morning intimacy is often the best intimacy. Oh, Lord. Sometimes you even get a side of eggs before you disappear from their bed and their life forever. This is... Come on. Like, seriously, thank you for the eggs. I'll never see you again. Like, oh my God. This is atrocious. Like, you know, this woman really clearly just does not value herself. This idea that vulnerability is a threat instead of an invitation has created a culture of hesitation of men circling intimacy but never entering it. And the result is thousands of tiny silos. Everyone performing closeness, but no one making a move that binds. Isolation, loneliness, a hunger for contact that has nowhere to land. I really don't understand what she's getting at. Like, okay, so what it boils down to is she's looking for something that's like very cerebral. That's my interpretation of this. Is she's looking for something that quite frankly is, what's the best way to describe it? Like those birds that flip up their like feathers to kind of do the mating dance for the lady birds. That's what it seems like, is she's expecting that. And that's just not there anymore. You know, like I said, a lot of guys are just done with it. You know? Maybe we're between paradigms, mourning what's fallen, not yet fluent in what comes next. The infrastructures of intimacy, slowness, curiosity, accountability, has been eroded by haste, convenience, and a kind of sanctioned emotional retreat. It's not about blaming men. It's about noticing the imbalance. It seems like you've been blaming men, but, you know, that's just me. About grieving what's not meeting us, and about refusing to dress it up as a personal failure when it's actually a collective reality. So here's what I'll say. You are missed, not just by me, but by the world you once helped shape. We remember you. The vision of you that lingers at the table. The laugh from the chest that asked questions and waited for the answers. That touch without taking. That listened, really listened when a woman spoke. Are we not listening to women? That is an interesting question, and I'll save that for final thoughts. But I'm gonna answer that one. You are not gone, but your presence is thinning in restaurants and friendships and the slow rituals of romantic emergence. You've retreated not into malice, but into something softer and harder all at once. Avoidance, exhaustion, disrepair. Maybe no one taught you how to stay. Maybe you tried once and it hurt. Well, at least you admit that. Thank you. Maybe the world told you your role was to provide, to perform, to protect, and never to feel. This feels like the push to create Metro Men in the 90s. That's what this feels like to me. Maybe I'm wrong here. Let's continue. But here's what's real. We never needed you to be perfect. Shut up. You did. You wanted the perfect man. We needed you to be with us. Not above, not muted, not masked, just with. And you can still come back. Not by becoming someone else, but by remembering what connection feels like when it's honest and slow. When it's earned and messy and, what is it, sacred? Yeah, sacred. We're still here. Those of us who are willing to, what is that? Co-create something true. That's a interesting word. I've never seen that word before. We are not impossible to please. We're not asking for performances. We are asking for presence, for courage, for breath and eye contact, and the ability to say, I'm here. I don't know how to do this perfectly, but I want to try. Come back, not with flowers or fireworks, but with willingness, with your whole beautiful, imperfect heart. We're still here, and we haven't stopped hoping. As for me, I'll keep showing up, not because I'm waiting, because I know what it feels like when someone finally arrives. I kind of want to see if there's comments, but no, there's no comments. Okay. Let's go to a break, come back with comments, and then I'll do final thoughts. Okay, so stay right there. I'll be right back. Thank you. Hello, my friends. Jack Descartes here once again. Thank you for watching this video. We appreciate it. I just would like to take a few moments of your time. Right now, we are currently raising money to host a website. We have Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, as well as a Patreon in case you'd like to donate once or you'd like to give a continued donation. The donation on the Patreon is only $3 a month. Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal, you can donate however much you want. There is no obligation. I will continue to try to provide as much content for free as possible. Once the website is up, we will use that as a hub for all Sentinel Circle related activities, including local meetups, as well as online meetups, online discussions, and videos. So again, if you could go and donate to either Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, or Patreon, all the links are in the description. We appreciate everything you have done for us. And if you can't donate, we still ask that you like, subscribe, and share. All these activities do help even in the most insignificant ways. If you do donate, you will be immortalized in our videos and the website. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Now back to our scheduled program. Thank you for coming back. I appreciate it. Now let's go right into the comments here. So the first one is from Godfather Ramadi. It's always good to hear from the Godfather, as always. Thanks for having me on, Jack. Enjoyed the topic. And that was about the conversation about alternative societies with Mr. Sam Fisher. I will say that I had to adjust, sorry. That live, and I'm still beating myself up over it. I do feel that I could have done a better job, but it was still, I feel, a very successful live. A lot of people enjoyed it, even though it did devolve into a couple of arguments here and there. But, you know, debate is argument. That's it. That's exactly what debate is. It's just there's a difference between, you know, being respectful and understanding and just screaming at each other. So, we'll just continue to work on it. Nothing's perfect. You know, there's always a way to improve. And then of course, Godfather, if you're watching this, I just want to say I enjoy your, Wolverine, avatar. It's very entertaining. Anyways, let's continue on. Nick, it's always good to hear from Nick. This was again on the video of Adulting 101. My grandmother taught me crochet and sewing. She's also the one who put a chainsaw and an axe in my hand and said, "Chop down these trees." So I will say that Nick, that this comment, all it showed is that, you know, someone in your life was willing to show you something. In this case, your grandmother taught you crochet and sewing. The whole putting a chainsaw and an axe in your hand and said, "Chop down these trees." Well, hopefully it wasn't next to a building, you know, but maybe you should have gotten a course in it or something. I don't know. The one thing is I would say that, you know, it still was someone in your home taught you a skill, right? Which that was kind of the whole argument with that I was making in that video, is a lot of those skills should be passed down to us. But see, I keep going back and forth on this, and you know, it's been over a week since I made that video, almost 3 weeks at this point. It's coming up on 3 weeks, but I keep coming back to that fact. It's like, okay, so this is kind of an outlandish scenario, but I'm gonna throw it out there. I can't expect my father to teach me how to, well, even though he was in construction, we'll just throw this hypothetical. I can't expect him to teach me how to read a blueprint, okay, or some kind of schematic, right? But you know, he should be able to do some very basic cooking, so I would expect him to teach me how to do that. You know, basically what I'm getting at is, to me, the school represents the state. And I personally firmly believe that the state should not be teaching you skills that you could learn inside the home, i.e., cooking, cleaning, child rearing. Okay? Even like, you know, basic functions like how to manage a checkbook, that kind of stuff. I personally don't think that the state should be involved in that kind of stuff, right? But where the state, I'm kind of iffy on it, because again, I'm a very limited government kind of thing. I really don't believe in like state-run education. But my question is without state-run education, where does that slack come up? You know, but things like math, you know, because, you know, my father, he was a high school dropout, but he went back at the age of 22 to get his high school diploma. Not a GED. He actually went back to high school to get his diploma. And growing up, you know, he straight up told us, he said he'll help with whatever homework he can help, but he can't really help with most homework. And that's kind of my baseline here, which is like, I would never expect a parent to teach math, you know, because especially more complex stuff like algebra, calculus, that kind of, a lot of people struggle with that kind of stuff, right? So you need a trained professional to teach people how to learn that stuff. And the only time you'll ever need that stuff is like, you know, if you're trying to understand more advanced concepts and things like chemistry, biology, that kind of stuff, right? Again, it's, you know, if you're going into a more advanced field, you need those foundational aspects, but you can't learn that at the home. You know, you need someone who's done it over and over and over again to the point where it's muscle memory to understand how to do it and how to teach you how to do it, right? But at the same time, like reading is one of those skills that not only does it develop over time, but it gets more complex. I, at the very minimum, would expect all parents to be able to teach reading, but then you get into a situation where I know this is kind of a politically polarizing individual, but I'm using his example as an example because it's the best one I can think of. Dr. Ben Carson, his grandfather was illiterate. He couldn't read, but every single day he was in the kitchen pretending to read a newspaper to show little young Ben Carson the importance of reading. And I know that there's a lot of adults out there that can't read. Specifically, I've noticed it with older adults. They can't read. People around my dad's age and older, there are individuals out there that can't read. And then, of course, there are adults that, they never really took up reading, so they can't read that well. So, again, that's one of those things where it's like, I can kind of see both arguments. So that's what I'm saying is like, there is no black and white in this situation. It's all gray. I may have to undertake that topic again, to really kind of drive my points home, because doing this in the comments and we're already at 8 minutes, I don't want to be taking up more time on this. But anyways, it was a good comment, Nick. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I'm glad that your mother or your grandmother taught you some kind of skills. Sam Fisher, always good to hear from Mr. Sam. I just shrug it off. Most of the time, people don't realize that rejection is a blessing in disguise, and this is true. People, I don't know if this is biology or what, but for some odd reason, let me put it this way. The bulk of people can't handle rejection. I do think that rejection is kind of a biological reaction. We have to train us as humans to handle rejection. And I think what it boils down to is we are a tribal species. And when we are rejected by the tribe, it affects us greatly. Because I know we're in an era of hyper individuality and all that stuff, but at our more baser level, we are a tribal society. That's how we handle ourselves, is we have evolved with a tribe, a family unit. And to be told that by a tribe that our ideas are stupid or whatever, it does hurt, and I think that is a natural response. And by us training ourselves to, as what Sam just said, to shrug it off, I think that's an unnatural stance within our biology. But I'm not saying that that's bad or anything. Training's good. Being able to do things is good. It's just, I'm just thinking that for some reason, a lot of people who don't get rejected that often, when they first get rejected, it hurts them very harshly. And that's why a lot of young people these days, the first time they're told no, they freak out. I honestly think that's what's going on there. Anyways, it was a good comment. Thank you again, Sam. I appreciate it. Singletown from Rumble. Women will never be satisfied with any man's living room, period. And that was I don't remember the article, but I remember the topic. It was she went to the dude's apartment and he had a futon that was not fully assembled, and it was that and then a little TV in the corner, and that was it. She was expecting she's like, oh, this guy is perfect in every way, until he got to the living room and it's like, ick. If that's the problem, because furniture can be bought over time, what the hell, if that is her reason to break up with him, then she's got problems. Anyways, Singletown, thank you again for the comment. I appreciate it. Timster 007, Tim, thank you. It says good luck, be safe, guy. And that was when I announced I had to go to Dallas for a week for training, and that was the last comment. So we're gonna go ahead and swap on over to final thoughts. So there was one thing I wanted to discuss real fast. Where was it? Oh Lord. So the this is what it was. They're looking at, okay, so the phrase that she said here, we remember you, the version of you that lingered at the table, that laughed from the chest, that asked questions and waited for the answers, that touched without taking, that listened, really listened when a woman spoke. So what does that mean? Well, you got to remember something. This woman is 54. You know, she's been married, divorced, she has kids. Okay. So I will say that, you know, and this is not my, because I'm in my 30s. I'm not going to tell anybody my exact age, but I'm in my 30s. But watching older people date, because my grandmother was a single woman, you know, and I watched her date older men, and oh man, it was atrocious. Like they you know, my grandmother, she grew up during the war. She told me stories, like the one story she told me, and I don't mean to go off on this tangent, but this is kind of to illustrate her age. The one story she told me was her babysitter, because of the nylon shortage, they had these makeup kits that the women would paint on their legs to make it look like they were wearing nylons, right? Because they needed nylons for the war effort. And she said that she remembered that distinctly during the war. My grandfather, he wasn't in the military. His father was a submariner, and they were stationed in Pearl Harbor when it was attacked. And it's funny, my father actually has these photo albums from my grandfather of Hawaii before the attack and after the attack. And a lot of them are in the same place. It's a very fascinating photo album. If I can find it, I would be happy to share it with you guys. But anyways, so that you know, they were young when the war happened. They were not veterans of the war. But like my grandmother, watching her date, I don't want to say it was, you know, it was just a different way. Like, it just seems like older people are just like, they want to cut through the crud, but at the same time, you know, it was the sign of the times. You know, women were very, they were playthings, you know, and that's just kind of how it seemed like to an outside the invitation. You know, I mean, back in the 80s, and in fact, I watch a lot of older movies. You have the trope of the guy that comes up and he's like, you know, enjoying the music. He's having fun with the music, right? And, you know, she's just sitting there smoking at the bar, having her drink, and she says, "Get lost, loser," right? And he's like, "Okay, but if you need me, I'll be over there," right? And, you know, it's a pure numbers game at that point. Right? We have the whole pickup artists, which, okay, like, I know the PUAs, they were kind of the scourge of the internet about 10 years ago, but they existed before that. You know, how many, you know, video series, again, I'm dating myself, but, you know, back in the 90s, late night TV, back in the early 2000s, you had these courses that you could buy online on how to pick up women, you know, and like growing up, you're like, I want that video series because I want to learn to pick up women. And then, you know, the great thing about the internet is we can watch those videos now for free and we see how cringy they were. So maybe that was a blessing in disguise that we missed that whole part. But See, that's what I'm saying is like, I think men had to work harder to get what they're getting now. Right? That's one. And two is Aaron Clary just came out with this video, what was it, yesterday or the day before or whatever, where he said that the red pill won, and it was because everything that had to be said was said. We all kind of learned, and the troops went home. He kept referencing that the troops went home, and I disagree with him. Actually, I think the red pill didn't win. I think that the reason why viewership is down is because, how do I want to say this? I think the younger generation is not consuming red-pilled material because it's already ingrained in them, right? And the older guys are just, I think they realize, okay, I got what I need out of it, and I'm walking on. And again, I'm not sitting there saying that like the red pill won or lost. I think the red pill did what it needed to do. But it wasn't just like, I personally feel that the red pill is kind of like the gospel. You're constantly spreading it, because there's always a guy out there that needs help. There's always a guy out there that needs the lessons of red pill. But I think that in general, people just don't want to focus on it anymore. People want to do something that they enjoy. Or maybe the inverse of that is people are so caught up in their own problems that they don't have time to deal with that. Maybe they're trying to, pay their credit card bills off. I don't know. I don't know where the trends are. I try not to be a trend follower simply because but it could also be that like the orange man won the election. Therefore, we feel we won, and then come the midterm election, we're going to lose. And then red pill is going to shoot up because people are looking for answers. I don't know. I don't know what the answers are there. But that's what I'm saying is like, it just seems like this woman's looking for something that her gender destroyed. She is, but she's, the way she talks, the whole heterosexual cis male, like, this is why men don't want to deal with you women anymore. We have to change our way of life in order to curtail to you. And men won't do that. I do believe that if you want to be in a relationship, you have to learn to compromise. And I hate that word. My mother used that word as a weapon against me for years. But that's the honest to God truth, is you have to learn to pick your battles. You have to learn to, figure out what you want in life and what you're willing to say, you know what, I don't need that. You have to find your lines in the grand scheme of things. But based on the trends of younger men getting more conservative and younger women becoming more radical, I think really what's going on here is this woman doesn't realize that, like, she sits there and says cis heterosexual men, like, like she's talking about laundry. It comes off to her so naturally, but what she doesn't realize is that that's not a natural way of talking. Maybe for like her circles, but like she's not going where the men are. She's only going where the women are. And that was the one thing I noticed in her article, is she's talking about how she's in these places, and it's like maybe one or two couples and the rest are women, either single or groups. And that's kind of my point, is she's looking for a man who's not there. The men who would be there, they're at home with their wives. That's really what it boils down to. she's looking for she's looking for a man that exists in a magazine. That's how old-fashioned she is. That's really the best way to put it. Is she's looking for a man who is a who exists in a magazine. You know, he's got the nice suit on, he's got the nice watch, the nice glasses, his hair nice, he probably smells nice, all that stuff. And the thing is a lot of men aren't doing that anymore. I'm sure that there are men that exist out there that do that, but the problem is those men are not men. You know, those men are not what men seek to be anymore. You know, men are probably at the gym. They're probably online playing video games with each other. They're probably out in the wilderness being manly men, you know, and she's looking for a new male, you know, not soy face, you know, scraggly beard, wearing glasses, over 250 pounds. You know, I'm basically describing myself, just, you know, tongue in cheek. She's not looking for a guy like that, but she's looking for a man that just doesn't exist anymore. And I hate to be like that, but yeah, she doesn't understand that. She's not going to go for a younger man either, because she's not going to have the patience for brain rot. So she's stuck. She's basically, I don't know. She's up her rear. That's really what it boils down to. She's up her rear. She doesn't realize it, and she's going to be miserable and alone for quite a while because of it. So, you know, she's not willing to change with the times. She says, you know, I'm here when you're going to be here, but you have to be this way. You know, she's probably blown off a lot of guys in the past because they didn't meet her high standards. I don't know. So we'll go ahead and end it here. I do understand why this article was so popular. I really do understand it. I think it was I don't think that she really understood what the can of worms she opened when she wrote this article. You know, she probably got a lot of hate online. I wouldn't be surprised. But the other okay, I know I said I end it here, but there's one other thing that I want to say. The fact that she worked for Playboy, I think, has a lot to do with it too. You know, not to say that like she was one of the models. Obviously she wasn't, but I think a lot of guys just realize, especially at that age, that it's that kind of stuff is absolutely abhorrent and degrading. I mean, a lot of them probably have daughters that don't want to go through that. I think she needs to reconcile her past as well. You know, I personally don't think that adult content is it should be banned. I disagree with it because it is free expression, but at the same time, though, I do feel that it should be treated like smoking. You know, it is a very addictive product. That it shows that it alters your mind. It's very damaging to the mind, to the body, to the spirit. And she participated in that, you know, as a peddler, you know, which, like I said, that I'm sure that has cost a lot of relationships for her, and she just doesn't realize it. You know, it sounds to me, the other thing too, since I'm on this, is she's more looking for a friend, not a relationship. That's what it really seems like to me, but she doesn't understand that. You know, she wants all this like connection and stuff, and the thing is a lot of guys are not willing to do it anymore. You know, we see, I don't mean to be so I don't know what word to say, but I guess we'll just say negative because I don't have a better word for it. I don't mean to seem so negative, but a lot of guys see women as threats now, you know, and that to me is sad, but it's, going through Me Too, going through and watching, even though people like Harvey Weinstein deserved it, what they're going through, but just to see the second and third level fallout where, you got to a point where a guy who likes to hug people, like I think the president of Pixar at the time. I knew a guy. He didn't work for Pixar. He worked at the kitchen through a like catering company at the Pixar office, and he said he saw the guy quite a bit, and the guy was just a hugger, right? And the problem is yeah, there's an accusation. Well, then a lot of people are gonna talk. There's gossip, whether you like it or not. There's gossip, and a lot of guys thought, they saw certain acts that they thought were innocent, like, complimenting, a dress or something like that, something super innocent like that, all of a sudden became dangerous. And a lot of people now are so afraid of, losing their jobs. They're afraid of losing their livelihoods. They're afraid of losing everything they worked so hard to build, because of the words of one individual. We won't say a woman. We'll say an individual. We're all now just like recoiling in fear in a way. And I think that has a lot to do with it too. I really do think that the culture that we're in right now could have been avoided had Me Too not happened. But I think Me Too had to happen simply because there are dangerous individuals out there like Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein is probably the antithesis of, or the antithesis, not antithesis, but antithesis of why Me Too had to happen. And to a lesser extent, Bill Cosby. People like that, they're dangerous. And the fact is nobody was believing them. So, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and end it here. I'm getting errors on OBS now, so we'll go ahead and end it here. Anyways, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble on God knows what. If you like my content, please like and subscribe. I appreciate you being here. And hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Have a good day.